When Yuji hits his lower point, people were focused on how hype the fight was. When Gojo got sealed, people simply got annoyed instead of understanding the deep meaning of it. Jujutsu Kaisen is arguably the anime with the earliest full-blown war arc in which takes place in the sixth main arc of the whole story. And it made me realize that JJK has something different in comparison to other series. But such difference made me realize that Jujutsu Kaisen became more like Dragon Ball Z, which in its earliest part was a more story driven with a very impactful moments like when Goku sacrificed his life in the attempt to kill Raditz. But everything would change for either good or bad in the Namek saga, where everything would become about forms and stages and power. And this comes between Frieza changing multiple times into different forms, increasing his power, as well while Goku reaching Super Saiyan, which accidentally or purposely made the story become what we recognize as simple fights and power scaling, while overlooking the deep themes and actual consequence these fights have. Let me pinpoint the difference when it comes to Jujutsu Kaisen and this phenomena that happened with Dragon Ball Z. In Jujutsu Kaisen, it happens as well. Before the Shibuya incident, the narrative was slower and its themes were more frontal. It gave time to them to breathe and feel more meaningful and important. I want you to remember Junpei's death, how affected people are like, oh, we thought this character would join to the main cast and be a recurring character. And it's shocking seeing him literally die, and it's very shocking. Or is more clearer how Yuji has to fight his moral compass to overcome the fact that he will actually be killing humans in instances. And this shows in a more direct way. Now, in comparison, during and after the Shibuya incident, everything ramps up in a way that only gives room for the hype fight, instead of giving room for the emotional moments, to the point that very crucial moments, like Nanami's death, that is supposed to be a moment where his moral compass gets fully broken. Since despite Gojo being his official teacher, Nanami was more of a paternal figure for him, pushing him further from the normal morality that will hold him back in the sorcery world. It gets overshadowed by Yuji fighting Mahito and how he beats the brakes out of him, or how Nobara's death, which is supposed to show us that sorcery is dangerous and nobody is secure, even if you have the potential to be the strongest, gets overshadowed as well by one of the most iconic moments in Jujutsu Kaisen, which is they brought 120% of their potential. And more importantly, it undermines Gojo's ceiling, how it's supposed to mean that the past and his mistakes finally caught up to him, since he was barely able to dodge the consequences in Jujutsu Kaisen 0, but can no longer run away. Instead, it becomes a hindrance for the casual viewer because they want to see him participate fully in this war arc. And Jujutsu Kaisen made this shift in a similar way in the Shibuya incident, raising the stakes at a very accelerated pace and putting these heavier themes on the back burners. The themes are still there, how to grieve loss. The themes are still there, how to grieve losses and still keep going, how unsolved trauma can ruin your present and future, and other deeper themes. And in my opinion, I feel this was an accident from Gege, deciding to go for a full-blown war arc in a very early stage, which is the sixth arc, mind you, the sixth main arc in the whole manga. And it's a huge change of pace in comparison to other mangas, because usually they will be used for either finishing up a storyline properly or introducing new main characters or more important side characters that will be important for the next moment. However, in the Shibuya incident is actually the catalyst, is what makes the characters move forward, and sadly it becomes overwhelming in comparison to be a story wrapper. But how the audience ended up? Well, to be fair, they actually reward this. This behavior is rewarded by them because many people I seen thought that Jujutsu Kaisen, its first season, was the weakest one. It didn't have anything special. It was very average. However, as soon as season 2 appeared, the sentiment would change. And what is the difference between season 1 and season 2? Season 2 is arguably the most hype-filled of its seasons. Between hidden inventory, which focus on how people focus on how Gojo became overpowered and how this is his origin on his power fantasy, and people overlook this arc is supposed to be the birth of how much trauma Gojo has within him, as well the Shibuya incident, which we explained earlier. The public rewards it because you either have the casual viewer, which enjoys only the fights and the face value story that the manga / anime presents to you in your face. As well, you have the elitists that if you give a slight opinion of what you think or you miss a small detail of the story, you will be judged and practically crucified on the spot. Would this be a bad thing? I genuinely don't know, since it can be bad in some instances. Power scaling is having no regards for the story and simply being seen for the feats. The opinions simply based on edits and shallow arguments. And this sadly has given Jujutsu Kaisen the label of either a LARPers anime or a very shallow read. However, and I want to be more clear, however, as bad as this story is, it has brought a lot of good as well. Between its insanely high popularity, praise for this piece of art, and a very large community that actually understands its meaning, and it's very impressive how Jujutsu Kaisen has literally changed the landscape for the anime and manga community, and with possibly more internet breaking moments in the horizon. But at this point, if we keep focusing only in the hype fight over the actual deeper meanings and themes of Jujutsu Kaisen, it would make us, yes, us, the ones that turn Jujutsu Kaisen into the next Dragon Ball Z.